Hey everyone, John here, and today is a very good day because the Virtual Boy has arrived early. This is the replica for Nintendo Classics Virtual Boy. However, there are things we can do with it right now without the Virtual Boy app, so it arriving a week early is no biggie. I also got this, which is the cardboard one, and there's a few reasons I got this, which I'll get into. But first up, a little comparison with my a little bit tattered up Labo. So this is a bit larger than the Labo unit, and there's a reason for that. Labo was just made for the original Switch. You could squeeze in your OLED with a bit of a push, but it was actually a little bit misaligned, so it wasn't the perfect fit for Switch 1 OLED Labo. And Switch 2, there's no way you can fit this thing in there. Whereas this actually fits both the Switch 1 and the Switch 2 in an interesting way. So the Switch 1, let's just gather this a second. We'll rip off the Joy-Con. And it's very easy. You just slide it in like you would the regular Labo. And it goes straight in like that. The edges kind of hang out a little bit like that, but that's not a problem when playing in VR. And when it comes to the original Switch, it's also very easy. But it's a funny workaround. Let's rip off one Joy-Con and put this in. And it actually hangs out a little bit. So once it goes in there, if you can see, it doesn't actually reach the top of the unit. So there's a lot of empty space, but when you're playing, it's not really going to matter. Like when I do this, I'm not knocking the Switch around. So it's actually quite simple to play like this, which is cool. Anyway, you also might be wondering exactly how it aligns itself, because if the image moves around, how exactly is it able to sync up with those circles? And that's another interesting part. Let's get both Switches back a moment. So on the Switch 2, the circles have actually been aligned in a different way. They're closer to the top of the screen. There's some empty space down here. Whereas on Switch OLED, that's not the case. They're pretty much perfectly central. So the way it gets around the difference in height is just by moving the circles around on a software level. And I think that's pretty neat. So Captain Toad's one of the examples I've shown off, and it's also an interesting example, because Captain Toad is 1080p on the Switch 2 in handheld mode, and as is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which has a Switch 2 edition that maintains the VR mode. So you're actually getting higher pixel density by playing Switch 2 in VR. And I'm not going to tell you it's perfect. I mean, it's not the best quality VR image you could get, and the slight smeariness of the Switch 2 screen doesn't make for the most ideal VR experience, but it still looks pretty good, and an upgrade over the original Switch. So here's just a side-by-side with Captain Toad, taken on Switch 1 and taken on Switch 2. It's very hard to show gameplay of these games, but I can at least show you what it looks like, and the actual output is way higher, because not only is it 1080p, but the Switch wanted to go under 720p to be able to render the game twice to do VR in the first place, whereas Switch 2's got a lot more headroom, and it's cool that they actually optimized the VR mode, which I guess they probably did with this in mind. Anyway, let's not talk too much about the actual cardboard version, because as neat as it is, it's not the most interesting part of the whole thing. This is what it's really about, the Virtual Boy replica. And it's very much a big chunk of plastic, because nothing really does anything. Like, you've got the controller port down here and the extension port here and the volume slider there and the field of view adjustment. They don't do anything. They don't move. They're just plastic decorative things. But if you were to pull on this bit here, you can insert either your Switch 1 or your Switch 2. Let's just do it with the Switch 2 a moment. So it just goes right in here. You lock it in, and there you go. There it is there. Also comes with a stand, which, much like the regular Virtual Boy, you hold this little push bit here, put it on, and easy as heck, you now have a fully functioning Virtual Boy. Now, when it comes to the actual playability of these games, the cardboard version is probably the superior way to go. For one, you can't put your Joy-Cons on a Virtual Boy, unlike the cardboard ones, which hang off. So you got to play with split Joy-Cons, which is pretty good for Virtual Boy games, but not so good for games like Breath of the Wild and Captain Toad. And also, when peering in, I'll show you better in just a moment, everything's red on the Virtual Boy. And there's something else you can do about that, because if you put your finger just under the little nose groove there, this comes out. And this is the red filter. So if I were to now look into the Virtual Boy, everything is in natural colors, as they should be. So this is basically just making everything red. And it seems like they're going to sell more of these in different colors, like cyan and yellow and all of that. But if you want to just avoid the red, just take this off and you'll be able to play in monochrome for Virtual Boy and regular color for everything else. But if you want to, you can play Breath of the Wild with just a big red overlay over it. Looks a bit like this if you're curious. It's like a blood moon's always there. But this is basically the gist. I think it's really cool how easy it makes VR for the OLED model and the Switch too. And especially it's going to make games like Breath of the Wild a lot more playable than they were on the original Switch. Because not only did that have a much lower resolution, which made you feel very nauseated, but it's also just going to run smoother at 60 FPS. I've been playing it a little bit, and I'll still say it's not the best VR experience, but it's definitely a big step up from the Switch One. Anyway, let me know what you think about the Virtual Boy. Are you going to be using this and the cardboard for anything other than Virtual Boy games? Let me know, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye, everyone.